My name's Drifloon. So as I was saying, I'm gonna talk to you a bit about Drifloon. Now this video was actually meant to be up literally, what was it, a month ago? Yeah, exactly a month ago at this day. Regardless, I'm gonna give you a little bit of my opinion on this. It's already in the suspect because a month ago I literally heard about, okay, so this Pokemon was gonna be suspected. People actually want to question as to why that precisely is. Some people are really against it. Some people don't see why it's suspected because it's simply not broken, and other people, literally a surprising big amount of the community actually cares about this Pokemon so much that it's like, we need it gone, we need it gone. It's so unhealthy, it's so broke. And I'm literally just laughing my ass off here, just thinking, okay, so you're saying this Poke is broke? Yet you were also saying that Diglett completely was healthy to the entire metagame. Stop making me laugh this much because that's fucking hilarious. As you can already hear by my opinion, I am actually one of the few people that would simply say I don't give a shit about this Pokemon. I put in this lovely background music from Pokemon Tournament simply because that's the same music that was used for Chandler. Which is ghost type. No, but I love the Pokemon Tournament music. It's actually pretty nice. So, without further ado, let's actually go into these Pokemon. I'm gonna talk to you about each and every single set in this. Every single part of the set, literally what these things do and how they are countered. I've literally put up a good list of counters, not all, also not the most direct answers maybe, like Pokemon like Lickitung can outstall it, Pokemon like Frilch can literally outdamage it thanks to just getting off a Skull Burn once. It can't keep on its substitute constantly, and that's the biggest problem with Drifloon in this regard. But yeah. Other Pokemon, for example, Larvitar actually take advantage of being burned. Pokemon like Lickitung can. It has a lot of sets, a lot of weird options that can combine to make up a very good answer. Pokemon like Amora can literally just break past this Pokemon. Pokemon like Ponyta don't even give a shit about any move it has to throw because acrobatic, it will get burned itself. So it's like, okay, why would you not use it as a counter then if that was really the thing? But the biggest problem you will see with these lists is the majority of these Pokemon, the vast majority of these Pokemon, are gonna be beaten by Diglett. Now you are saying that this Pokemon is unhealthy for the metagame, when the only reason it is unhealthy is because Pokemon that would be viable regardless are limited by Diglett. I think that's just utterly hilarious. Oh well. Okay, sorry. Okay. So without further ado, let's actually get straight into these sets. We have first of all the set that actually was the most argued one. Now I need to admit something here. Frickett, and shoutouts to Frickett, he has been using this set at the beginning of the Missy metagame, literally against me to the point where it's like, okay, I literally just run a counter on this in every team. And after a long time, because I completely forgot about him using that set, because I never used Drifloon. Literally, I cannot say this many more times. I don't give a shit about this Pokemon. If it's gonna be banned, if it's gonna stay, I don't give a shit because I rarely see it, I rarely play against it, I rarely use it. Or to be fair, I never use it. I've used a stall set, which I like right now. Used to really hate it simply because I couldn't play with it. But yeah. Drifloon, I'm gonna be very objective with this. This set is not broke. It's literally the thought that in this metagame, the answers against it are not valid enough to justify its staying for whatever goddamn reason. Why? This whatever goddamn reason is called Diglett. And yes, I'm gonna be the one blaming it on that if you want to look at it from that point. But oh well. was gonna say I looped the thing. So let's go into these answers. Pokemon like Ponyta. Ponyta, as I just said, is straight up one of the best answers, and I've actually at the time used a lot of Ponyta until Frickett started using Diglett against me, and I was like, oh god damn it. So I really just didn't understand how basic kind of things I could have been using against it, because it really forced a more offensive use thanks to just Diglett, while Drifloon forces defensive use. Looking at Pokemon like Lickitung, rest stock users, stuff like that. Now, keep in mind that at 17 speed, Drifloon has a lot of shacks. I mean a shit goddamn motherfucking load. Even with this bulk, it doesn't survive enough hits from Pokemon, say Magnemites, Chinchou. Now, if you actually make the spread even bulkier, but then you lose your speed, then yes. However, then you're gonna look into other sets, for example, Baton Pass VP set or the Calm Mind Pass set, for example. But I'm gonna get into those later. For now, it's literally just, you have, this is just an example list that I drilled up. Frillish is a bit of an odd one. I actually want to scrap this one because it doesn't really beat it, but also doesn't lose against it, really. And that's a bit of an odd point right there. But yeah. Lileep is just, it doesn't give a shit. It can just Ancient Power until it gets a boost, and then it actually does something. But then it suffers from PP. So it's like, this thing can be PP spelled, but then this, and yeah. It's really an odd situation to put Lileep into this as well, so I want to scrap these two, as well as Lickitung. It's just a bit of an odd one. Clamperl and Omanyte. Omanyte can run multiple sets to beat this thing, actually. It can run the Rock Blast set, it can run the regular Smash set, and it can run the Weak Armor set, which is also a nice one. Staryu can literally just take 2 acrobatics, and it can literally just spam Scald until you are burned. It also is faster than the 17 speed version, so it's like, okay, that's how it is. If you don't know about the stats of Drifloon, Drifloon relies purely on his high HP, and it's pretty low defense considering the fact that it's not running Eviolite, but that's still pretty great. The normal rule is 22 HP, 12, 11. So 22 HP, 12 defense, 11 special defense, and that's actually the spread that Pokemon like Trico run. Trico is capable of taking almost any normal hit, say a Drain Punch from Mienfoo. It can take that. This thing has literally 4 more HP and 1 more special defense. That is a massive increase. However, this thing also still suffers from some weaknesses. It doesn't have any 4 times weaknesses, luckily for it, but that's about it. Substitute allows you to get past a lot of stuff. It allows you to get safe opportunities to burn an opponent. It gets you safe opportunities against Sucker Punch users. It allows you to wither down your own HP, getting you into Berry Juice range. For Burn to activate as well, you are going to be able to recycle. It has so many uses. The biggest problem with it, however, is it's mostly going to be used on precisely this stall set. Another problem is sometimes Substitute is used sometimes people don't use Substitute and use Knockoff. Knockoff will allow you to literally just beat Recycle Magnemite, which is the only thing worth noting in my opinion. You also beat Staryu, objectively speaking, but it doesn't really do anything great for you. Torchic, yeah, okay, I actually need to say that fire types in general are going to be a very big thing in the list. For example, even Larvesta is going to be an answer for some sets. It's really just, once you figure out these sets, look in your team again, and realize, oh yeah, I actually have answers against this thing. And it's like, oh yeah. A lot of people right now are simply against it for the reason of what is this thing? What does it do? What does it accomplish? I never faced the thing, so how is it broke? That's a really stupid argument. Viability is not the same as usage, and it's really just a situation of, once you understand what kind of teams these are put on, understand what kind of sets these will be running. If it's not running it, then it's either a weird composition of the team. Very rarely you actually run into a team seeing, oh yeah, yeah, okay, that could actually be these and these and these and these sets. Many of these sets I'm already combining because they are very similar, or how similar they are team-wise. For example, weakness ender set and the offensive set are going to be the two sets that you really cannot see a difference between without using Frisk. But then again, why are you using Frisk? So let me go into Calm Mindset. The Calm Mindset is gonna be a really interesting one. Shoutouts to Upget. Upget actually used this set at the time people used the stall set, and he's saying, okay, this set is actually the better set. He was right. At that period of time, it was the better set simply because people were still somewhat dazzled by the stall set itself, and people like, oh, it's so broke, it's so broke, it's so broke, and I'm literally sitting here like, I've been preparing for this thing since the motherfucking Missy metagame, and you are actually telling me that this thing is broke? I'm sorry, but I may seem like a dick in this regard. I may seem like a really stupid person in this regard. However, I have been preparing for this thing for so long that it just seems mandatory for me. Literally, when I was talking about the Diglett suspect, I have many other Pokemon in mind as well. Not just Fletchling, I'm mostly looking at Shelder for this. But again, that's pointing again at Diglett, and I have many reasonings on that. Simply because some Pokemon just pair so well with it, and it's just utterly stupid to see those things. I don't remember any other things besides Scarf, Poniard being a thing that's freaking actually abused in terms of sets against me. But yeah. The Calm Mindset is pretty interesting. Let's actually talk about that one for a moment. The Calm Mindset, once it gets up one Calm Mind, a lot of answers, for example the special oriented answers like Magnemite, Chinchu, Porygon, Staryu would somewhat still beat it, except it really suffers if it's running Thunderbolt, which it should. Onomite, Clamper also suffer from it, so we get an entirely new list. Vullaby is actually quite interesting. If you're not setting up a Calm Mind, Vullaby would still be a counter to it. Objectively speaking, Vullaby is still a counter to it. It can take a Thunderbolt and it can almost KO it. Well, okay, yeah. Okay, it is not a counter, however, it completely hinders all the use a Pokemon has and puts it in such a valid range that it's going to be more of a kill trait than anything. Because it's so extremely easy to revenge kill at that point. A Pokemon like Poniard is simply gonna take any of these two hits, and that's the thing. I'm also putting the Hack set and the Calm Mind set in the same group. The only difference is going to be one Pokemon doesn't like getting burned. Poniard can still, even while burned, completely hinder this set simply because of knockoff. The same situation as Vullaby, simply kill trading at worst regard. The Hex set simply does one thing, it runs Hex. This is the Hex set. It runs Calm Mind, Will-O-Wisp, Hex. These two are gonna be your defensive systems. Hex is gonna be your offensive part, combined with Will-O-Wisp stalling. So literally, Will-O-Wisp stalling and Hex. Hex is gonna do a lot of damage once you get the opponent burned, and that's a really surprising thing because it picks up some important knockouts that Shadow Ball would not. But outside of all that, other Pokemon like Houndour suddenly become an answer, Pokemon like Larvesta suddenly become an answer, Pokemon like Scraggy not that much. I don't really like putting in Scraggy simply because Scraggy needs his Shed Skin to activate, which again, I don't really like talking about that kind of regarding, but yeah. Other Fire type Pokemon are also an active answer. Special defensive Chinchu, 14 special defense. Bear Juice or not, it actually hits just below 50% range, and after that it's pretty handy. If it's actually knocked into this range and then burned to knock it completely out of that range, that can be problematic. However, why again is it staying in for that long? It is made to force out this Pokemon completely, so it's like, why? Allot can deal with this thing if it hasn't set up yet. Larvitar can take a Hex. Other Pokemon like Tortuga, Munchlax, Recycle set, Onix, Dwebble, and Deerling. These just don't like getting burned. If these are burned, then it's completely pointless. However, if these don't get burned, these are complete answers to it. This is a pretty small list if you compare it to the majority of answered Pokemon. However, if you want to give me a complete comparison, just look at Minfu. Name me a Pokemon that can actively switch in this metagame and not get U-turned on without punishing it, can answer it, and so on and so forth. Literally, it can just click U-turn against about all of them. That is forcing a switch, however, but it doesn't really lose anything from it. The only thing you can do against punishing it would be a, I don't know, a poison point Pokemon or a flame body Pokemon, which once again leads me back to the point of Diglett. As you can see with the majority of this list, Allot, Chinchou, Larvitar somewhat, Larvesta, Ponyta, Houndour, Pawniard, Diglett. And yes, I'm saying Pawniard is weak to Diglett, as substitute Diglett is there for a goddamn reason. And you need to be really good at predicting, or you need to just be Enigma against me, because Enigma always wins with that thing, to predict every single substitute or attack. Weakness policy ender set. That's the next one in the list. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, the Calm Mind set runs Thunderbolt, which doesn't really allow you to pick up the KO on Vullaby. However, it allows you to pick up the KO on Clamperl, Omanyte, Staryu, those kind of stuff. Also, Pokemon like Taillow don't like switching into it. Pokemon like Frillish can take it, a bit like Vullaby. However, they just don't take too many of it after that setup, because it really hinders most of the use of Frillish. Because Frillish can also do a very similar thing with Hex, but again, that's Frillish. That's a really bad argument in that regard. I could also put a Numel in this list as well, but Numel is just, it doesn't have recovery, it doesn't have anything in that regard, so it's like, it's just gonna be potentially set up on if it's not burning it, so it's pretty pointless in my opinion, because it needs to be running Rock Slide or something weird like that in order to actually accomplish something. That does exist, don't get me wrong, Grout, Rock Slide, but the weakness policy ender set. Now this is a really interesting one, because a lot of people were simply forgetting it existing or forgetting how it worked. I love running Sucker Punch or Destiny Bond in this set. I don't like Will-O-Wisp that much, simply because like it doesn't really help it much. Sure, it prevents it from getting into the 1 HP range, but that's about it. Sucker Punch, however, I prefer, simply because once you are at +2, your attack damage will suddenly become 28, combined with Sucker Punch doing pretty heavy damage. Pokemon like Fletchling, for example, if slightly weakened, that's not really enjoyable. Other Pokemon like Aqua Jet users, not really enjoyable. Or even Ice Shard / Shadow Sneak, those are moves as well, but not worth noting in my opinion. So what beats this set? This is actually really funny, because this is the most defensive forcing set. It forces defense simply by just put any status on it and it did be mostly crippled. Pokemon like Ponyta, Porygon, Snivy, goddamn Snivy even, Bronzor, Bronzor can toxicate it, Snubbull, Fungus, Torchic, / Vulpix, because I'm considering the Willow set in it, Staryu, etc. Those are all great answers for just a status part. And then we have the other Pokemon like Scouters, like regular Pawniard, Substitute Pawniard, Vullaby again, once again, Carvanha Substitute, Torchic Substitute, Ghastly Substitute, many forms of scouting that actually don't do much against, how do I say this? That doesn't actually accomplish much in terms of, okay, Drifloon can set up on this is a big problem. No, you can actually force your opponent with this to literally just spam substitutes constantly, literally just PP stalling them for absolutely no reason, or accomplishing something by breaking the substitute and being able to outspeed them the next turn, for example with Carvanha and Torchic. But Ghastly, for example, Ghastly is a great Pokemon in this regard, because Ghastly outspeeds it naturally. Pokemon like Torchic and Carvanha can speed high it, being a gigantic threat. Torchic actually suffers a bit from the speed tier in this regard. However, once it gets up 1 speed, it outspeeds suddenly. So, yeah. That's actually a bit positive in this regard, because say Drifloon puts up substitute in the checking regard, Torchic is slower than it, so it fire blasts, and it breaks the substitute. Next turn it will have speed, and it's gonna be able to fire blast at the end. That's not gonna be able to kill it, however you can, with Will-O-Wisp, once again beat it in that regard. Scoundrel substitute is important with Will-O-Wisp and see the move pool. It allows you to scout this move pool. This is a threatening set, like many of these sets, for example the Stall set, the Calm Mind set, and the Weak set. These are threatening, but there's another threatening set as Abra had. The Weakness Policy set. I'm saying the Weakness Policy Battle Pass set and the Weakness Policy, the Calm Mind Pass set. I've ranked these things combined with each other simply for the reason of, okay, so these things have similar answers and these things are completely threatening Pokemon. Ponyta. Once again, my lovely friend Ponyta. Omanite, Clamperl, once again, they can literally obliterate this Pokemon when it's trying to set up, because this set relies purely on some regular bulk. In fact, I increased this one to 14 bulk rather than 17, as this would allow it to even take a hit from Magnemite and Life Orb Allocate. All except the last roll. The highest roll would be able to knock it out, so there's a 6.3% chance of it dying from an attack from Magnemite, even including goddamn Thunderbolt. That is lovely. That is just lovely. So we are gonna consider this set. What else is there? Well, you have Porygon that only works for the stockpile set. The stockpile set is just so freaking bad. I cannot stretch you how bad the set was compared to all the other ones, but okay. Larvitar, once again. Almanite, Clamperl, Larvitar, yeah. Larvitar, I'm gonna say it's very simply, this Pokemon really just does one big problem. It's bad. It's so bad. Why am I listing this thing? Oh yeah, because this is a really odd set to list. If you're gonna look at, for example, Torchic. Torchic can set up for almost free against about anything. And there are little answers that can prevent it from setting up. For example, Whirlwind Hippo, Taunt Minfu, and these kind of stuff. And these can even be bypassed by, say, Will-O-Wisp or something along these lines, and that's gonna completely cripple them. So you're running into weird options like Whirlwind and Dragon Tail Licking Tongue simply because Baton Pass in general is a slight bit of an issue in LC. Not to the point of it being ban-worthy, don't get me wrong, but it's a bit of an issue. Pokemon like Cottony, for example, can Encore it, completely preventing it. Pokemon like Fungus can Clear Smog it, completely preventing it once again. Pokemon like Shallows can not only prevent it from happening with Clear Smog, but can also set up alongside it, which is a bit of an odd thing, but it can. Timber only beats the Calm Mind set simply because its knockoff is gonna hurt more than anything else, and it's gonna obliterate it if it's burned. Thanks to Guts. Unlike all the other ones, this is overflown with checks, including strong hitters like Doduo, Ponyard, and whatever. This suffers more from checks simply because I increased the defense from this in trade of the speed, while the Battle Pass set I actually increased the special defense of it in trade of the speed. Once again, you can run a bit more speed, allowing for some strong hitters to be less effective, but it forces a lot of strong offense into the metagame or a lot of strong defense into the metagame. Neither of those are bad, simply because the Pokemon that are viable against it, once again, Ponyta, Porygon, Timber, Fungus, Cottony. Okay, these are a bit odd, but also Pokemon like Shells are odd. But you have many other Pokemon that you can also include into this, for example, Staryu. It doesn't really accomplish much in terms of stopping it from setting up, but that's with a lot of Pokemon that can set up. You either need a solid wall against the move pool, which there are a shitload of, but I'm including Pokemon that can completely stop it from both setting up and these kind of stuff. For example, set Pokemon like Dwebble, Tortuga, Shelder, as long as they are aware of Will-O-Wisp, they can actually set up alongside it and beat it. But then again, why would you not run Will-O-Wisp or not burn it with Will-O-Wisp? Stuff like that. Excuse me. For example, the issue with the other sets, as long as you keep your normal dark type alive or special, everything should be fine. The only thing you need to worry about is it passing to something. Once again, this is a problem in general. You have a lot of lacking ways in terms of preventing this. Well, it's a bit interesting because I'm not running a lot of speed. You can put Pokemon like Apom and Minfu with Taunt as a check as well, because they can not only prevent it from passing, they can literally prevent it from being burned, prevent this and prevent that, and they barely take any damage. In complete objective speaking, Apom in this regard would be the ultimate answer because it doesn't even get hit by Ghost type moves. Once again, there are a lot of these things. Now the support set is going to be the most hilarious one to compare to all the other ones, because I'm running knockoff simply for it to beat Porygon, what's that I'm saying? To beat the following Pokemon: Ponyard, Munchlax, Lickitung, Vullaby. Actually somewhat loose to this simply because I completely buffed this thing's defense. Wrong set. I'm sorry. You beat Bronzor, Munchlax, and Chinchou with this, simply because Chinchou now gets outstalled because of your massive HP and special defense. You actually take about any hits besides Thunderbolt has a chance to knock off to KO as far as I'm aware. Hulk. Bulky Attacker, of course. Drifloon, Calming Stall. We're gonna up its HP a little bit. And now we're gonna go for Thunderbolt. This should only have a chance to, knock it out, which of course with Stealth Rocks is gonna be a guaranteed KO thanks to the beautiful roll it has. But yeah. Now this set is not meant to beat other Pokemon that it normally wins. Like literally. This set is simply to support. You make use of your ability to stall while giving support to other Pokemon. I actually threw on knockoff rather than acrobatic or shadow balls or hacks, simply because the convenience. This set is going to be more direct in this regard as a support set rather than a stall set that's going to be a bit changed. Oh, goddammit. Ooh, excuse me. So you're purely taking advantage of a little bit of Drifloon's use and combine it with just needing a support Pokemon. You're not completely using it as a good Pokemon, you're using all the stall parts and making it a support Pokemon. That is literally what it's meant to do. It's not too great at it simply because it makes it even more weak against Ponyard, but okay. Now we have the next set, and this is the set that I actually hate the most simply for the reason of it being pointless. It sucks! The Choice Specs trick set, the only positive it has is being able to trick an item, and only if you're tricking against, say, a Munchlax, you're gonna get even more use out of it. Simply because you lose your item in trade of what? Yeah, in trade of what? You can lock a Pokemon into one of the most useless items in the entire game, which is Choice Specs, which only works on a very small list of Pokemon. Again, it's immensely small, but okay. What this set basically does, it allows you to instantly KO Pokemon like Vullaby on a switch. It allows you to get these kind of Pokemon on a switch instantly. It could run Air Cut, I think it was. I wrote down Air Cutter. This set can run Shadow Ball over in the knockoff slot as well. I was gonna say that. You can also run Hex. I don't really like running Hex, but then you would be running Bolt, of course. I don't like running Hex simply because of the reason that you keep in the mind that everything needs to be burned in order for it to actually be worth using. But Hidden Power Fight. Hidden Power Fight is going to be your main thing to deal with Ponyard in this regard. Shadow Ball is going to be your main stat move, and the strength from Choice Specs is going to be somewhat noticeable, but it's not going to be enough to actually tell you, oh, this is gonna be a great wall breaker, because it still is walled by Pokemon like defensive Porygon. It's gonna be walled by Licking Tongue, it's gonna be walled by Munchlax, and these are the 3 normal special walls that actually wall about anything. So it's like, okay, so the choice specs doesn't allow me to suddenly break them. So it's simply still the same in that regard. And once again, the only thing you beat is if you're tricking it, if you Thunderbolt Vullaby, if you're using it against Pawniard with Hidden Power Fight, and that's it. Because if you're tracking it against Licking Tongue can knock you off with the Eviolite the next turn, and so it's gonna be, okay, what now? You don't do anything from that point on, you're literally just gonna be forced to switch out from that point, so... Munchlax is gonna be, of course, the most hindered one, because both sets actually get a bit eliminated with this, but it's still like... You waste your entire Pokemon for this, so it should make sense that you can beat walls like this, because these are very valid answers overall. Other stuff is done better literally by every other set, even the support set, goddammit. And then lastly we have the offensive set, which is the set that I give the least shit about. This is literally the one set that was used the most, apparently, by other people. Again, I never really saw this Pokemon be used properly in terms of against a matchup, not in terms of sets. I actually, every time I look at it, I just don't give a shit about it. I never did, I never would, I will never do that, simply because if it's banned, so be it. If it's not gonna be banned, so be it. I already prepare for it, so it's like, even if it was broke, I already prepare for it completely. So my opinion in this regard doesn't really hold too much, even less than a grain of salt in that saying. But this set basically allows you to burn, substitute, standard stuff, a bit like the stall set without. This time you get Shadow Ball as your coverage. You can also run Hidden Power Fight, you can also run Destiny Bonds, that kind of stuff. You basically hit stronger, you have 14 attack and 14 special attack. You're very, very lacking on the defense. You can still take a hit, don't get me wrong, you're still Drifloon, but you're not going to be taking the hits too well. The speed increase, that's massive, that's pretty useful, the 17 speed. I can say that about all sets, a lot of support sets. If you're going to say 17 speed, sure, you're going to be able to burn Pokemon like Pawniard and Pokemon like Minfu very effectively, but that's about all you will ever do. Like, actually speaking, that is about the only use that set would have. The other Pokemon include Arcan, for example. I really want to say that this set, offensive set, you can run HP 5, you beat a little up, while priority with Sucker Punch, you can also run Sucker Punch on this, forgot to say that. Anything else is just in comparison to the normal set, pretty much like on stall utility and as full, so pick on a few KOs with Acro that you wouldn't otherwise. Yes, you actually pick up some KOs that you wouldn't otherwise, for example, against Fungus, if Fungus has lost his Eviolite. Let me actually calc that thing, because I calced that a month ago. Fungus, say you lost your item, and Fungus lost its item. That is gonna be a KO once you get Stealth Rocks on. It's already a pretty decent chance, objectively speaking, to KO. That's a bit of an odd roll. Normally you get like 3 instead of 5. Oh well. But yeah, that's pretty handy. Pretty good to keep in mind. This set abuses the most in terms of as Stealth Rocks. Like, any of these sets really love Hazard Stack, and this is really just a positive thing. But I want to emphasize one thing on this. All of this information that I just gave you, because it's already a pretty long video, I'm sorry for that. But keep in mind, I literally just gave you a lot of answers for each individual set. Now add all these sets together, you get a Pokemon that actually has like answers for about every single set. No. The most common Pokemon you see returning are Pokemon like Ponyta, for example, which I just love a lot. However, I already abuse them on about anything. So let's actually take in mind, the majority of things that you will see as answers will be Scarfed users that just don't give a shit about it being burned. Pokemon that can outstall it with the Restock set, because believe me, if I wanted to include the Restock set, I would be literally saying Stall set, Restock. Ender VP set, somewhat of a gamble, but Restock. Battle Pass set fully depends on what kind of Pokemon you are considering, because Pokemon like Skrelp can obliterate it, Pokemon like Chinchou can pivot it, Pokemon like Mantex, like Wilmer. Many things that you would switch in, it would simply wouldn't give a shit about, except with an electric type. Pokemon like Munchlax is a bit of an odd one in that regard, because Munchlax is the only one that actually gets beaten the most by other sets, because it lacks a strong dark type move. But yeah. Other poor checks, for example, Anorit, who can Rock Blast, Magby, who actually gets almost taken out completely by an Acrobatic. If Stealth Rocks are up, it should be taken out, if I remember. Pokemon like Ghastly. Ghastly is a great Pokemon, don't get me wrong. Life Orb, Abra with Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is an important move in saying of you beat Honach, you beat Gotita, you beat... Okay, you also beat Natu, but you also beat Drifloon as well. There are a couple of reasons to actually run Shadow Ball at this metagame, but it's more like you can also run Energy Ball, you can also run Dazzling Gleam, and these are also important moves. So, what was the other move? Knock Off. That's a bit of an odd one that I'm saying right now, but I actually want to talk about this in a completely different video combined with some other Pokemon as well, because some weird set changes that would make no sense to you, but if you think a bit more about them, they actually make a lot of sense to you. For example, knock off Abra. Oh, you have a Scarf Pokemon that would take a hit and then obliterate me or pivot me. Excuse me, what? Like you take that away. You take away Pokemon like oh yeah, I forgot to note knockoff Abra as well. You take away Berry Juice from Pokemon like Drifloon, Pokemon like Munchlax, Pokemon like Magnemite, Pokemon like Bronzor. But yeah, Bronzor, I have not seen any increase in usage, I'm sorry. I've been playing only a slight bit in this metagame so far, but it's still like, it's not used. With slight bit, I mean I played 10-ish battles. I lost 2, 1, no. I lost 3, 1, 7. Yeah, I played 2 in the, no, I played 3 in the suspect ladder, not losing all 3 of them, no, but 3 in the suspect ladder and a couple more yesterday. But yeah. So basically, if you understand this list, you really just see that a lot of Pokemon that are on this list either can abuse with an odd way the burn, for example, Timber and Larvitar, or they are immune to the burn, or they are special attackers. And if you're a special attacker, you somewhat suffer from the Calm Mind stats. However, some Pokemon are still able to bypass that. Then you have the Baton Pass set. The Baton Pass set simply abuses Baton Pass, which is an attribute that if a Pokemon has it, it's going to be somewhat helpful if it's going to be able to set up regardless. It doesn't matter if it was Drifloon, if it was a Torchic, if it was whatever, it's going to be helpful if it's pulled off properly. And some things just obliterate that. For example, I made a special note, Encore Cottony beats Stall, Calm Mind, Weepy, Baton Pass, Support, Spectric not necessarily actually if it's running Flying Stab, because that's actually the only thing that it really does right. The offensive sets, someone suffers from it if it's catching on the right move, but once again, there are a lot of odd ways like this, for example, that could bypass it. Could. The word to catch it on, could. It's very situational rather than just a straight up answer for it, but the biggest issue with it is, if I compare it to Diglett, Diglett doesn't have any situational. It's just a very straight situation of you need to be preparing for it with a Scarf, you need to be preparing your entire team for it, or you need to be using just general orientation of your team to offensively pressure it. For example, instead of defensively, okay, I don't want any weaknesses to Diglett, no, I just want to have my entire team being able to wipe it away, for example with Aqua Jet. But that's just me giving an example. So I actually hope you learned something from this video. I'm gonna say it again. I am gonna be voting for it to not leave, because I don't see a point in banning a Pokemon that has no reason to be banned. There is one small tiny thing that I actually want to emphasize on this. I'm not saying any Pokemon like Diglett or Abra should be resuspected. Of course, we should do a new suspect in the Gen 7 metagame, but that's just Gen 7, that's completely different in that regard. However, I don't see a point in banning a Pokemon that is in no way unhealthy to the metagame when it has valid answers to it that generally beat almost all the sets it has except the few, which applies to a lot of offensive and defensive threats in the LC metagame. That's just generally the thing. Many Pokemon literally just beat this thing. Excuse me. There are many Pokemon that are simply viable that beat this thing. There are a lot of these Pokemon, not just Ponyta, also Pokemon like Chinchou, also Pokemon like Magnemite. But when you're looking at these things and saying, oh, but these Pokemon are less viable because name partner, then you're taking in account that partner to be forcing the metagame itself in chopping away those things. And it just happens, Diglett. All the issues except for certain Scarf users, and that's like, just, it doesn't make any sense for me to view this thing in that regard separately. There are now a lot of people that are simply against anyone saying anything about, Diglett being associated with Drifloon, because literally suggesting that is not what they wanted. They want specifically to argue Drifloon, and if I want to be very objective arguing Drifloon, then there shouldn't be any Diglett evolve, and there shouldn't be any kind of thing saying that this poke would be broke. Genuinely. Some people I have already heard saying, you're stupid based on that. And that wasn't Vuban that was saying it, because I actually said it incorrectly, suggesting, oh, Drifloon should leave. No, that was the incorrect thing. I was actually meant to say, I have no reason for it to leave. In that kind of wording. Rather than, oh, I want this thing to leave. Because there is no reason. There is simply no reason. If you're gonna say, okay, this Pokemon is broken, then you're utterly incorrect. If it has answers, then it cannot be broken based on that. Because these answers not only are valid, these Pokemon are simply good in the metagame regardless. Even right now. So that's just wrong when you're saying that. Because sure, it can set up a lot of opportunities if it gets the opportunities. But then again, why is it getting the opportunities? It can also force a lot of different weird methods of being used, also a lot of weird methods of getting passage. For example, Rock Tomb. That's a really interesting one. Rock Tomb Drillbur is one of the moves that is actually on Drillbur a lot more used right now. And Drillbur, I can stretch a lot of times. Drillbur is just what it is, and it's not gonna change. It's literally just the poke that it is, nothing else. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. My name is Ryan Phillip, and I'm out.